Hey, it's Fanmail Friday, and you wondered, does this team have enough to convince Shohei Ohtani to stay? John and I are going to chat about that and more. It's time to get locked on with Mike and John, and this is Locked On Angels.
You are Locked On Angels, your daily Los Angeles Angels podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. You can find us anywhere you get your podcast, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and SiriusXM by searching Locked On Angels. And of course, the best way to help us out is by giving us a rate and a review. 5 stars would be appreciated. And those watching on YouTube, make sure that you're subscribed and click that bell to be notified every time a new episode drops.
Thank you for being here for this episode of Locked On Angels, where it's your team every day. You've got the Frisch brothers here with you, a.k.a. the Super Halo Bros. My name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Hey, it's our second season here at Locked On Angels. We're halfway through our second season, Michael. That's crazy. 71 games to go. And of course, there's lots of questions to be asked. And you asked them for Fanmail Friday. So we're very excited to get into your questions. Hey, coming up on Monday, by the way, we're going to recap this weekend series against the Astros that starts tonight. They're back at the Big A. Hopefully you get a chance to get out to the stadium and watch a game, catch a game. Shohei's on the mound, so you might want to get there tonight if you're so inclined. Mike, we've got some good questions here to start us out for Fanmail Friday, including this first voicemail. Let's go to that right now.
Hi, this is Landon from Victorville, California. I've been loving the Paul Goldschmidt discussion because I actually grew up a Cardinals fan from Arkansas, but I moved to California 4 years ago and have been really following the Angels closely. I love Paul Goldschmidt, but I do want to let you guys know something if you're not aware. Paul Goldschmidt is another one of those guys that's a very quiet leader, and I'm not sure that's a bad thing. It's just that it seems like the Angels have a lot of those guys. Who is somebody that they could go get in this deadline that could bring some bravado and boldness to the team that would make a real difference in the just the clubhouse morale? I'd love to know.
Hey, Landon from Victorville, thanks for giving us your voicemail. That was a great one, Mike. Goldie's kind of a quiet leader, and we've got plenty of those, as we know, in Mike Trout and Shohei Ohtani. We don't have a lot of like fire, passion kind of guys. I always talk about Jared Weaver and how much I loved his fire and passion on the mound, and I'm sure that translated to the locker room as well. Who do you see that the Angels could get, or maybe they already have that person who could bring some fire to this team? What do you think?
I don't know if it's going to be somebody that they could go and get, because having somebody that has kind of a big personality and a lot of charisma that comes onto this team, I think that really might throw some things off. Not that it couldn't happen. You mentioned Marcus Stroman as somebody that maybe they could go and pick up.
I was going to say that because, you know, I'll be honest, he's a bit of a head case sometimes.
Right.
And I don't know if you want to balance that with, you know, this kind of even keel team that we have, but I think about Mickey Moniak and Joe Adell and those guys like getting excited and fired up. Logan O'Hoppy's another one. I would say that
somebody like Carlos Estevez would be somebody that I know he doesn't play every day, but I think Carlos is the type of guy that could really fire this team up and help them get focused. I don't know if he's doing that, but his comments to manager Phil Nevin when he didn't pitch in a game, he was like, Phil, I'm going to tell you when I'm good to go, and I'll tell you when I need a day off. And I love that fire. I love his passion. I love that when he was really struggling, he was like, why am I struggling? Why am I pitching like garbage right now? I'm going to just get it done. I'm going to go get it done. And so I think it could be somebody like Carlos Estevez. I love those names like Joe Adell. I think if Joe Adell could perform, I think that would actually give him the platform to be able to be somebody that fires this team up. Mickey Moniak seems kind of quiet. He does seem kind of like a Mike Trout type. The reality is you don't need a big mouth on this team. You just need somebody that's going to help rally the troops. Maybe it's Escobar. Maybe he can be somebody because he's starting to build trust. But I think if it was somebody on this team right now, I would pick Carlos Estevez.
Yeah, I think about Eric Ibar when he woke up the bats. Remember when he took them all out of the batting stands and the dugout, threw them on the ground, and wake up bats. And it certainly paid off for the Halos, but that's the kind of attitude that you need. And that's interesting to me. Escobar being, you know, a veteran, 34 years old, I could see him being that kind of guy. Like you said, there's a lot of veteran presences on this team. Not anybody who's like a rah-rah kind of person.
Right.
I know we talk about Patrick Sandoval, but he gets fired up, but sometimes he gets fired up to his detriment, which is not always the best.
Oh, dude, absolutely. 100% agree.
PMC Grath 06 from Instagram and Listen to Cole on Instagram kind of had some similar questions. So I'm going to read them both off, Mike, and you give me your thoughts here.
Okay.
Will the Angels sell young players like Adele and Moniak to acquire big names in trades? And the second one is, if we are buyers, who do we ship off from the major league roster to package with prospects? What do you think about those?
Let me start with the first question. I think Adele is somebody that they would trade. I don't think Moniak is. And the reason for that is because Moniak has proven to be a consistent and really kind of a strong Major League Baseball player, and Adele still has a lot to prove. And he's proven that he can be great in the minor leagues. Major leagues, he really hasn't had a chance this year to prove himself, although he's come up and he's made a big impact with his bat in a couple of different moments. But now with the oblique injury, not quite sure where he stands. But I think if they're going to trade anybody, it's going to be Adele over Moniak. This question about selling off some of the major league roster. I'd love to hear your thoughts there, because like the question that I ask is, do we even have pieces maybe outside of Hunter Renfroe?
Yeah. I mean, it goes back to the idea that like, if you're going to buy anybody, it's usually to add to what you already have right now. You've got a winning formula. I know the Angels don't quite have a winning formula, but for example, like if you're the Dodgers or the Padres and you're looking to add Ohtani, and we'll get into kind of a question about that later, they want to keep the core that they have and add an Ohtani to that. And I think in the same way, the Angels want to add to what they have already. And so maybe you trade a Renfroe if you're willing to give Joe Adele that full-time shot. Like that's risky to me. Maybe if you think about it this way, they traded Noah Syndergaard last season and got Mickey Moniak back. And then maybe a player like that helps you get to where you want to go, whether that's the playoffs or whatnot.
Yeah.
Here's what I will say when it comes to major league talent. It's not going to be Taylor Ward, and it's not going to be David Fletcher, and it's not going to be Andrew Velasquez.
Yeah.
Not that any of our listeners brought this up, but I do see that comment quite a lot. Like, what if we traded Rengifo to...
Let's trade Fletcher and let's trade Ward for Bonds and Griffey.
Yeah,
I think that actually would be a great trade.
We'll get Shane Bieber for Rengifo. And maybe like a low tier, like it's not going to happen, because you know who you are if you make those kinds of trades or you make those kinds of proposals. You're like the Yankee fans who kept saying, well, the Angels could trade Trout for like Clint Frazier and Miguel Andujar. Like that would be reasonable. Like that. Yeah. I've heard that 100,000 times. And Clint Frazier's got DFA'd. He's with the White Sox now. Andujar's with the Pirates. And so, it just goes to show that, these top guys that you consider top are not always top to other teams. So again, Mike, I think if you're willing to run the risk of trading somebody like Renfroe or, like you said, Adele, whatever comes back to you is a piece that you're going to want to add to the stew that you got going on right now. And you add a couple of things to that, baby, you got a stew going, right? That's my Arrested Development reference for the day. Hey, coming up on Locked On Angels, we're going to get into more of your voicemails, including situations where it might make sense to trade Ohtani and would he stay? We're going to talk about all of that coming right up. Let me remind you, though, that the Angels play the Astros at 6:38 Pacific time tonight. Ohtani is on the mound. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast with SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Today's show is brought to you by eBay Motors. Now, we know for a really great championship team, it's about making sure that every player is a perfect fit. That's why we're talking about trades. And it's the same when it comes to your vehicle. Every part needs to fit just right. And if you're like me, Johnny, and you don't know about cars, you need to know that the part fits right, because you're not going to be confident. That's why eBay Motors is so important for people like me and people like you. They have the eBay Guarantee Fit. And you can be sure with the eBay Guarantee Fit that every part fits just right the first time around.
And you won't even have to call Dad either, Papa Halo Bro. You'll just know, and then he'll be impressed with your ability to just know that you got the right part.
See, I don't even have the ability to impress him. All right. So, hey, here's what you can do. If you're working on your car and you go to ebaymotors.com, you can actually go to the My Garage, and there's a place where you can put the part in and what kind of car you have. And then you just look for the green check mark, and that'll tell you if it's going to fit or not. And if you get it and it doesn't fit, you get your money back. And I love that. And they have 122 million parts to choose from. So I'm sure that they got the part that you need. You can get the right parts, right fit at the right prices on ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guarantee Fit is only available to U.S. customers.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Hey, Locked On Everydayers, don't forget that we're recapping this Astros series against the Houston Astros on Monday. It starts tonight, 6:38 Pacific time. You can catch every pitch of the Angels' hometown broadcast on SiriusXM with the SXM app. Just search Angels.
All right, it's Fanmail Friday. This is segment 2. We've got a great voicemail. Johnny, hit it.
Hey guys, it's Spencer calling from Newport Beach. Love the show, love everything you guys do. I wanted to bring up Shohei Ohtani. I think at this point we need to explore all options to trade him. And a lot of people are talking about getting a haul of prospects and kind of doing a rebuild, but I kind of feel like if we can find a team like the Dodgers or the Padres that genuinely think they could potentially extend him or re-sign him, I think we might be able to get some MLB-ready players, potential stars, in a package. I want your guys' thoughts if you would do something like that. Let's say the Dodgers give us Julio Urias and Dustin May and like a mid-level prospect. I know Urias is going to be a free agent after this year, so maybe there's a little bit of leverage there with that. And maybe the Padres, Tatis Jr., and some other prospects. Just want to get your guys' thoughts. If a package like that was on the table, does that change your mind on whether or not we should keep Shohei?
Spencer from Newport Beach, thank you for your voicemail. You bring up a good question. Does that change our mind whether we want to keep Shohei or not, or we would trade him?
Yeah.
I mean, if there's a superstar on the table, like if the Padres were going to consider giving us Fernando Tatis Jr., right? And we had him for a couple of years and maybe we get a prospect with that as well. Like that's something I would consider. My only issue here, Mike, is that the teams that can afford Ohtani right now are the ones who are going to be in the playoff race.
Right. Yeah.
They want to, like I said before, they want to add Ohtani to the offensive stew that they got going on in San Diego or Los Angeles or maybe even Baltimore because, you know, they have plenty of trade capital in their prospects. I just think that using the example that Spencer brought up, you're not going to see somebody like Julio Urias come over to us when the Dodgers need him to be who he is for them.
Yeah.
And he's on that expiring contract, so I'm not sure that he would stick around. Anyway, it would just kind of be like trading, you know, part for part. And really, you're in a position where you're trading Ohtani and you get somebody like Urias back, you would still think that you're competing at that point.
Yeah.
It's not worth trading Ohtani for somebody like an Urias. However, again, I think if the Angels traded Ohtani to another team, it's going to be prospects just because you can't shake up a major league lineup when you're in the playoff hunt, when everybody is so crucial to getting you to the playoff hunt. So, you know, he also brought up would a major league team exchange major league talent if they thought they could re-sign Shohei? And I think that's a possibility. However, there's no guarantees after this season with Shohei. Even if you have him for those 2 months and you're trying to convince him, he's going to free agency. And we'll talk about that later, but like he's going to free agency. So you want the pieces who are going to get you to the playoffs to play with Ohtani. I don't think that any teams would get rid of pieces to get Ohtani that are part of that run. What do you think?
If the Angels trade Ohtani, they're going to get pieces like Mickey Moniak. They're going to get pieces like Joe Adell. They're going to go get those types of pieces. Those guys who are on the cusp of actually making the major league roster. Logan O'Hoppe is another example. That's the type of players that they're going to go get. I don't see a scenario, to affirm your point, I don't see a scenario where we would get a really strong major league talent like a Tatis or a Juan Soto or something like that for Ohtani, because again, to your point, those teams are competing and they're not wanting to eliminate, they're wanting to actually benefit. And what would be a benefit to them is to add Ohtani as a pitcher and as a hitter, and then have their AAA and their AA teams be where all of the pieces come from, and that gets sent over to the Angels.
You know, I had this thought, this is a little bit off topic, but I had this thought today where I know that people want to get prospects back for Shohei Ohtani. And that's fine. And I think that's perfectly reasonable. But if you're somebody who wants to get prospects for Shohei Ohtani, and in the same breath, you complain about Joe Adell and his defense and how he's a quad A player, Absolutely not, because that's exactly the kind of person you're going to get back for Shohei Ohtani. I understand. I mean, look, he was a top 10 prospect in the majors before he got called up. Am I mistaken there? I feel like he was.
Maybe so, yeah.
Yeah, I think he was top 10. I think it was the last one that the Angels had. I know he was definitely in the top 100, but I definitely think that he was close to being a number one prospect, if not. But again, if in the same breath you're wanting Ohtani to get prospects back to the Angels, and you're unwilling to be patient with somebody like Joe Adell, who's 24 years old, by the way. Yeah. Also, I had this thought, Reed Detmers just turned 24 years old. So I'm going to back. I know that he frustrated us the other day. I'm going to back off a little bit. He had a stinker. I get it. He's been awesome the last month. He had a stinker against the Dodgers.
Yeah.
Just turned 24. Good grief. Like, he's got his whole life ahead of him, Mike.
Well, and that's what happens when you're trying to compete, is you have these guys come up and you're expecting them to be Justin Verlander and they're Reed Detmers, right? And so that's the thing that I think when people like, hey, we're going to get a haul and we'll get all these players. I think the expectations for these players is that they're suddenly going to be Mike Trout-esque. They're suddenly going to be like Anthony Volpe. He's on the major league roster with the Yankees, batting around 200, by the way, and struggling. He's hit some home runs, but that's what you get with some of these young guys. And so I think that the reality is, if they do trade Ohtani, it's going to be those types of guys. I think they're going to be high tier guys. They're going to be top 10 guys in the organization, but that's who you're going to get. You're going to get Joe Adell trying to work on his defense, and he may not be in the major leagues to work on his defense. He might be in AAA.
Exactly. Hey, let's go to our next voicemail.
Hey, it's David Rogers from South Carolina. But it's just about the trades that the Angels have to make. Even if they were to trade Ohtani, you can come back as a free agent. I think we all seem to forget that, because if it's not about money, it's about winning. It would give the Angels a chance to put some players in there, put the pieces in there, and get him back. It's not the end of the world. And I don't think we're that far off from having a really decent baseball team, because if you look at all the other teams, what teams that won the World Series have a player like Ohtani or Trout? Nobody really has those players. So you can do it with a different cast of characters. But anyway, I do appreciate you guys. I listen to you every morning. You're my dose of sanity when I just want to jump off the ship. But anyway, I hope you guys have a great day. Bye.
David Rogers in South Carolina. We're the sanity when you're about to jump off the ship. Like, sometimes I want to jump with you, David.
Yeah. Hey, by the way, David, you should start a podcast. You got a great voice.
That's what I was thinking.
That's a podcast voice there.
That's a podcast voice right there.
I love that.
Something I don't have, but you know what? I try really hard.
Yes.
Mike, he brings up an interesting point about you trade Ohtani, you get prospects back, you have the chance to re-sign him in the offseason, right? To me, that's like best case scenario. Other than like going all in with Ohtani and somehow the Angels go on this magical run and get to the playoffs in the World Series. That's best case scenario. But the other one is you trade him for prospects and then he comes back to the team and you're better than you were this year. Like, to me, that's best case scenario. I'm concerned with what that says to Ohtani, what that does to Ohtani. If you trade him to another team, like he's very comfortable in this environment, right? Yeah. He doesn't have to talk to the media that much. He's going through his own routine. I feel like, you're like, well, hey, thanks for living here your whole life. And now it's time for you to move out. Right. That's kind of how it feels. And maybe he's not ready for that. I just think if that's what they would do, they have to have a real intentional conversation with him that says, hey, this is our plan. We want to trade you so that you have a chance to go win somewhere. We want to get prospects back. And we want to re-up with good players, and then we want to bring you back in the offseason. And like I said, maybe that it appeals to him because he gets a chance to go win somewhere. But then you tell him, we want you to come back and win with us. David makes a good point there. Like, that's another scenario that we can think about. I get worried about trading him and giving another team the 2 months to extend him or convince him to return in free agency. I'm still convinced that he's going to free agency no matter what. But what are your thoughts here?
I think that he is going to free agency no matter what. I do think that if the Angels trade him, they do give up their exclusive rights to negotiate with him until he hits free agency. And I'm just throwing out ideas here, right? David, I actually would love for them to trade Ohtani, get prospects back, and then re-sign him, right? If they're out of the race, then let's do that. That's fantastic. Ideal scenario. I just wonder if the Yankees did that with Aaron Judge, would Aaron Judge have come back, right? I know they were in the race last year, so the scenario is a bit different, but I think that there is loyalty. I think there is power in relationship. And I wonder if that would actually be a positive impact or a negative impact on Shohei. Hey, for 2 months, go and figure it out over here. I mean, he's Shohei Ohtani, Mr. Unicorn. He could figure it out.
Sure.
I'm just thinking it feels almost too ideal to even try.
Yeah, exactly.
Today's show is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Johnny, yesterday, the wife and I went and made a big purchase. We got a brand new car. We were excited about that. And as we were driving home, I was driving because it's a brand new car. I have to drive it, right? And so as we're driving home, she said, "Hey, really proud of you. You were patient and you were like flexible and all those things." And I said, "Honey, you know why I was patient and flexible?"
Oh no, here we go.
Because I was wearing my Bird Dog shorts.
Which are patient and flexible, right, Mike?
They are patient and flexible. I wasn't uncomfortable as I sat there and signed my life away. It didn't feel bad. I wasn't sweaty. And if I did get sweaty, they've got this anti-stink protection. Like, man, it was just a really good day. I felt calm, cool, and collected. Like I was out on the golf course, Johnny, or maybe out on a date, or maybe hanging out with some friends. I had my Bird Dog shorts on and I felt really good. It was a really good day. So you can feel really good and have a really good day with a pair of Bird Dog shorts or pants of your own. Just go to birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. When you do, use our promo code LockedOnMLB. Bird Dogs will throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti style tumbler with every order. That website again is birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. Again, use our promo code LockedOnMLB. One more time, birddogs.com/LockedOnMLB. Go there today.
Okay, we're getting into our last couple of questions for Fanmail Friday before we get to the weekend and take on those Astros. Hey, Mike, Game Over 27 on Instagram said, "What does this front office see in Velasquez over Soto?"
Yeah. Beginning of the year was defense, but that actually hasn't been the case with Velasquez ever since. You've got some numbers in front of you, John. Share those.
Yeah, you really want him for his defense, but here's what he's done so far. He's got negative defensive numbers, a 944 fielding percentage at shortstop, which is not great. I know it's above 900. Really, any kind of fielding percentage you want between like 980 and 1,000. Anything below that is like, that's questionable there. A negative 0.4 ultimate zone rating. And it's just, it's not been what it's been last season, Mike.
No,
but
he's very different on the defensive side.
Here's the thing, though. I think they like what he brings to the bases. I think that he does well when he's on base and he steals bags. He's stolen 6 this year. He led the team last year with 17 stolen bases. So it's a matter of the defense they think he should be giving and also getting on base and creating havoc there. The problem is Squid doesn't get on base.
Right.
And maybe Soto's not the answer. I know that he was exciting at the end of last year, but doesn't this bring up a larger question, Mike, of like, why isn't Stefanik here? Why isn't Trey Cabbage here? Why is it Velasquez and Fletcher and maybe even Rengifo? Like, why are those guys here? Yet Stefanik, who makes great contact, gets on base, had a 60-something on base game streak. Why are those guys here? Isn't that the problem here?
I think it's the shortstop position. I think that's why those guys aren't here. I think that what we saw earlier this year that was really messy with Rengifo at shortstop and other guys is why Zach Neto was brought up. They were just sick of it. And they wanted somebody that can play really solid shortstop. And out of all of those guys, I'm going to say it out loud, and it's going to leave a bad taste in my mouth. Out of all of those guys you mentioned, Velasquez is probably the best shortstop we have in that group of guys. Maybe Fletcher can give him a run, but quite honestly, like they are a few tiers lower than Zach Neto. And I think that's why Stefanik and Cabbage are not up, because Stefanik plays second base and he's more of an offensive guy rather than a defensive guy. And so I think that's where that tension really lies. And the Angels are kind of stuck with Velasquez and Fletch until Neto comes back.
Yeah, he can't come back soon enough. Hopefully we get some news. As of this recording, we're not quite sure where he stands. So hopefully we get some news there. Hey, Mike, I love this name. The Real OB1 on Instagram.
Nice.
That's OB, the the letters OP. He said, is Shohei going to stay? Mike, if I'm real quiet, will you stay? In the words of Eric Matthews on Boy Meets World. Mr. Feeney. Aww. Shohei, will you stay? What do you think, Mike? Is he going to stay? What do you think?
Well, you already mentioned it. He's going to test free agency, and the Angels have always said that they'd go over the luxury tax for the right person, right? And here's the thing about Shohei is he is the right person. He is the right player, but re-signing him probably puts them not over the luxury tax, but if they're going to get pieces around him, they'll have to go over the luxury tax. I will say this, and we've said this before on this pod, I will say that the Angels can afford Trout, Rendon, and Ohtani because they're really only adding $20 million to this payroll, and they'll probably lose about $20 million with the players that will come off the payroll.
Yeah.
The only problem with that, though, is that you have to replace those players with good quality Major League ball players. And I don't know if the Angels feel like they have that. Maybe they do. And that's where, Renfroe can go and Mickey Moniak can play right field next year. But that's the thing that really I don't think is going to be the greatest tension for the Angels. The greatest tension will be if they re-sign Shohei, who else are they going to bring in around Shohei? And will they go over the luxury tax in order to support him?
Yeah, it's a matter of, did you sign a bunch of players and you're under the luxury tax and then you wanted to add Shohei and then he's worth going over for? Or is it you signed Shohei, you're under the luxury tax, now will you add more guys to go over the tax because they're worth going for? It's just like, it's the chicken or the egg, Oh, it's definitely worth going over for Shohei, but they're going to try to get Shohei and stay under the tax. I think that's the kind of person that Artie Moreno is. They aren't going to sniff that luxury tax. Here's my thing, Mike. They have to be competitive, and the Angels need to be competitive by having a young core of players. And I think that they're building that right now. I think it's 10 years too late because they should have been doing this a long time ago. But now you've got Ohapi and Neto and Moniak and probably Adele figures in there. You got Sam Bachman and Reed Detmers and Sandoval and Silseth and Ben Joyce, and now Zach Joyce. Boy, we're going to mix up Zach Joyce, Zach Neto, and Ben Joyce all the time, by the way. Yeah. Is there enough with this team right now in terms of core young players that you can build around to want to bring Ohtani back and convince him to stay? What do you think?
Oh, man, I love all those names you just shared, but they're unproven quantities. And if they are going to convince Shohei to stay, they're going to have to convince Shohei that these young guys are going to be incredible guys. I think the guy that can actually probably put it over the edge is Logan Ohapi. He seems to have a really great relationship with Shohei.
That's true.
And I think Logan in a full season, Zach Neto in a full season, I'm confident in those guys, much more confident than what we've had in years past, even Andrelton Simmons and even some of the guys like Maldonado that we had behind the plate. I'm confident in these young guys because their defense and their offense, and they actually, I think, will make a huge impact moving forward. So I look at those guys and I go, there's a lot of potential, but if Shohei is looking for definitive performance, we just don't have that to offer him in the presentation for him to stay.
Yeah, it's really going to be an interesting offseason. So again, I think we should all prepare our hearts that if he gets traded or if he stays with the team, he's going to test free agency.
Yeah.
That's a given. And I think that he's going to look at all the offers and people are going to throw the bag at him. He's really got to want to be here. And I'm uncertain if the Angels have done enough for him to want to be here, especially with the young guys. But who knows? Maybe he'd like to come back and help get this team. I always felt like he really wants to help this team get to the playoffs.
Thanks for making Locked On Angels your first listen of the day. Reminder, the Angels play tonight, 6:38. You can catch every pitch of the hometown broadcast on SiriusXM on the SXM app. Just search Angels.
Hey, we appreciate you being here for Fanmail Friday. You can get at us at Locked On Angels on Twitter and at Super Halo Bros on Twitter and Instagram. If you're watching on YouTube, comment below. Let us know your thoughts on any of today's questions. Mike, what do we have on deck for Monday's show?
We're going to recap the first series of the second half on Monday. We'd love for you to join us on Locked On Angels.
It's going to be against those Astros, and the Angels got to step out and take care of business this weekend. That it's a must, and so we're either going to be very happy or very angry on Monday. So come back and join us on Monday and find out how we feel. All right, until then, my name is John, and that's my brother Mike.
And my name is Mike, and that's my brother John.
Thanks for being here with us, and we'll see you back here on Monday.